Hey, what's up, guys? Brian Prahl again with the Palmetto Mortgage Group. This is now episode 6 of our top producer series. I'm really excited about who I'm interviewing today. A lot of you guys know Rene or have at least been exposed to Rene at some point last year. We had Rene in as a keynote speaker for a big realtor event that the Palmetto Mortgage Group held last summer, and Rene was kind enough to fly cross country for us in that regard. Rene and I have been friends for I don't know, 5 or 6 years now, and have gotten pretty close over that time period. And honestly, I have a tremendous amount of respect for what he does, his knowledge base, the activity that he has in our industry, his ability to communicate effectively. To me, that's one of his biggest attributes. And, literally for 20 years, Rene has been active in applying his knowledge in behavioral neuroscience as a dynamic keynote speaker. He's an advisor, he's a sales guru and general badass. And honestly, Rene, I really appreciate you taking your time to be here with me today, man. Thank you.
It's an honor, brother. You are truly one of the best this industry sees, and I am always inspired and impressed by your ability to immediately execute things. I'm the overthinker. You're just the executor. That's why. It's an honor to be here, brother.
It's funny to come and you watching this wouldn't know this, but prior to us hitting record, Ray was asking me if I needed to, if this background was weird, how he looked. And I'm like, man, I haven't even looked at myself in the camera yet. I just hit record and roll, man. It is what it is. And actually, it was you. I've given your advice to me when I was asking you last year about video marketing and if I was needed to put more thought into what I was doing and how I didn't like how I sounded and looked and it was you that told me, bruh, got bad news for you. That's how you look and sound. And so literally from that day, I've been doing videos weekly and I have you to thank for it, man. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll still remember when we got there and you're like, hey, you want to do a video? I'm like, okay, cool. And in my mind, I'm thinking, we got to set up the studio, get the lighting done right. And we walked in, you grabbed a camera, held it up, you go, okay, start. Rene, so I'm like, and then 35 seconds later, we're done and we're walking out. It took about maybe 47 seconds to go in and shoot the video, hand it over to the team. It was executing. You and I were already off planning the event and doing money activities.
True story. So listen, and this is an important time for us, right? And so you and I were just discussing, the state of current events. You've got not only the coronavirus and COVID-19 with all of the stuff going on with that. Now you've added to that the George Floyd situation and all the stuff going on with that. And what I was talking with you about was, what is our responsibility as lenders and as realtors now? And your thoughts on that were inspiring. And so if you don't mind, kind of talk us through, what your thoughts are all about all that.
Yeah. And here's the reality. Whether this, by the time this airs, I'm hoping things have died down from what's going on. There's a lot of tension in the air. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of miscommunication. There's a lot of politics. There's all sorts of things that are happening all at once. And that affects the consumer. That affects your families. That affects your ability to lead. It affects everything. And one of the most important skills of leadership and one of the most important skills of being a sales professional is the ability to have empathy. And empathy isn't about agreement. Empathy is about understanding. And I tell people all the time, it's easy to be empathetic to those that believe what you believe. Show me that you can be empathetic to somebody that believes what opposite of what you believe. Can you have the courage and the maturity to just to listen, to see what's going on? And I'm talking about all sides right now. I'm talking about all experiences. And the ability to be able to do that is the most courageous thing. And right now is a time that we all need to listen to what's happening in the current environment. We need to be able to stop and just pay attention. And I tell people all the time, I said, the best part about being able to listen to someone is that if you don't like it, you can go back to what you used to believe. But there's no harm in just letting that guard down and just truly listening from the heart.
Man, and it's tougher to do than it sounds, right? I mean, there are people that have entire lifetimes of belief systems that they've built up, and so it's a harder shell to crack sometimes.
Yeah.
But to your point, I mean, if there's ever been a time, which to be clear, my position on that would be that the time should have been at any point in our history.
Yeah.
But now, when things culminate, if there's ever been a time, now is the time to exhibit that type of empathy, right?
Absolutely, man, and I'm so glad you said that. True. This didn't just start with George Floyd. This started back with a lot of pain and a lot of history, And there's a lot of pain everywhere. I called, two of my cop friends that, and talked to them, and one of them is a very significant individual in Las Vegas, and he said that he goes, Rene, nobody hates a dirty cop more than a clean cop. We can't stand it because we're here because we care. And you have in Minnesota so much anger going back and forth with folks that truly have been plighted, truly have been abused, and now if we don't listen, it's going to get louder, and we need to be able to stop and listen to what's going on. That's the only way change is going to happen.
So, and I don't want to minimize the point that we're talking about now, but for the purposes of this video, I think it might behoove us to transition into, okay, we have this situation, everybody agrees is terrible. As a real estate agent or as a mortgage lender or as a salesperson in general, what do we need to do at this point?
For sure. Yeah. And the reason we brought it up was part of the skill of sales professionalism is understanding your environment. Where is your client at? And you take George Floyd, you take COVID-19, you take a crash in the stock market, you take any sort of stressful event. And I'm not comparing the gravity of any of those, so don't go there. I'm saying if somebody's going through divorce, if somebody has a death in the family, it affects the nature of your client, and your ability to connect with them during those moments is the most important skill you have. And so the reason we brought that up is right now, because there's a lot of stress, you have to not only engage in the sales activities, but you have to engage in them in a way that actually includes the empathy part. And there's three things that I put together. It's not only the word empathy, but the word transparency and authority. All three of those need to go together. So empathy is our ability to understand what's going on. For example, Brian, if you had a death in the family, so Brian, I can only imagine how difficult it was to lose this individual in your life. A statement like that, or I can't even imagine if I'm talking to a female who's been through a difficult situation. I'd say, God, I can't even begin to imagine what it was like. And truly find from the heart my ability to empathize, but the transparency would come with what's the truly transparent thing. If you don't know what the next step is, that's the transparent statement. So you might say, and I don't know what the next step is, or I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be, or I don't know what to say. I'm not a black person. I'm not a woman. So I didn't have a death in the family. I've never lost anybody like that. So whatever it is, to be transparent. So empathy, transparency. The third piece is authority. And then to be able to say, if you're leading a team, to say, folks, I understand right now is a difficult time for all of us to stay focused. There's a lot of stress in the air. We don't know what's going to happen. I personally don't know the outcome or when this is going to turn around. But I do know this, authority, that we still have to service our clients. We still have to keep our customer service to the nth degree, and we got to communicate more than ever. Empathy, transparency, and authority. Putting those together is what creates that powerful communication.
And so, strictly from a sales perspective or from a realtor's point of view at this point, they're dealing with their database. And so you mentioned sales activities, and those things could be online lead gen. Those could be calling your database. It could be your sphere of influence. It could be any way that a realtor or any salesperson for that matter generates a lead or generates business. And so what you're saying is that in our sales conversations, those three things are important and necessary almost.
Absolutely. If they're coming to you looking for advice on what to do next, and you just go into authority, here's what you need to do. It doesn't work. But the empathy helps me connect with you. The transparency helps me build trust. But then the authority, I can take those two and believe what you're asking me to do. So we have to be able to do all three, especially in the phone calls that we're calling our database. Start with where people are at before you take them to where you want them to go. The great Jim Rohn said that. If someone's in the hurt, you got to start in the hurt. If someone's in trouble, you got to start with the trouble. And one of my favorite statements he always said, now, if you've never been in trouble, well, go get arrested for something so you can understand what it's like to be in some trouble. The ability to understand the journey of the human spirit is what really sets us apart.
I don't even know where to go next. So full transparency, I don't know how to transition that to what a realtor should be doing at this point, but I'll open it up to you.
I think that I can help with that because right now, and you said this before, which is right, is you guys are the heroes of the economy right now. You're the ones that are keeping this whole thing alive. Well, and home ownership is critical in the time of crisis. Home ownership is the safe haven for people that are scared out in the street. If somebody lives in an apartment, if they had their own home to be able to go to, if they didn't, if it's there's so much value in the work that real estate agents are doing and lenders and their ability to partner together. And right now, because we know from a numbers perspective that now is an amazing time to buy a home, and we know that people are worried, your ability to communicate why now is the time to buy is going to be the most important skill right now from a sales perspective. Can you articulate why now is a time to buy? Can you articulate financially? And now, here's the thing. Financial information is taken in by one part of the brain that is shut down when people are scared. And so why we need to start with understanding where they're at so that they can open up the different parts of their brain to see their future and to make a decision now to be able to do that. You're, Brian, one of the best I've seen at that.
Well, that's all I was going to ask you. Do you have a script or a line of questioning that a realtor can tactically implement in their conversations with people?
The scripting to me is such a critical component of the sales profession, and having multiple scripts to be able to address a specific scenario. What I would suggest is subscribing to my dear friend Steve Harney's Keeping Current Matters blog. His whole team, and it's 40-some thousand plus, maybe it might even be more members subscribe to this, but all they do is they search for data to be able to answer why now is the time to buy. And they put it in beautiful scripts. They put it in beautiful infographics, PowerPoint presentations that you can download and use. And that, to me, he is the best at being able to do that. Obviously, following the Barry Habibs, if you get part of a Mortgage Coach, jump in the Mortgage Coach community and take a look at they're free videos and free videos and free videos on scripting from the industry's best on what to do and how to say it right now. In fact, we just did a thing called Scriptapalooza. Did you see that one?
I saw it. Yeah, it was great.
I mean, you had 12 of the industry's best saying, here's exactly what I say. And then they transcribed it. So you can download the transcriptions of those. I mean, it's beautiful.
So for guys watching this video right now, if you're interested in that downloadable, the transcript of that Scriptapalooza, happy to get it to you. Just let me know. I've got access. And honestly, I agree with Rene. It was invaluable listening to people and how they communicate. Rene, so when you came last summer, we had, 150, 200 realtors. You were presenting to us. You were talking about mindset. You were talking about the ability to communicate and tell your story. I know we don't have too much time, but do you mind kind of maybe doing a quick recap on that ability and that presentation that you did for us?
Sure. So influence is, at the end of the day, what we're trying to get to. It's not just about communicating or speaking. A lot of people feel comfortable speaking and presenting, but they're not influencing. And influence comes down to, am I influencing a new thought and a new behavior, more importantly? And so when you understand that there's a science to influence, there's a methodology that the brain, the sequence that the brain follows, that when you plug into that sequence, it's like it's like almost like, plugging into the energy of the human. You can actually see the activities there. And so the steps are what we call frame, message, tie down. And framing is a natural human response to understanding the world we live in. We have to see things through a frame of reference. And when we don't have a frame of reference, we're confused. That's why when Uber first came out, we're like, what in the world? Uber? We don't know credit card? It didn't make any sense because there was no frame of reference. Netflix came out. We're like, wait, I don't have to rent something? I don't have to, what? I don't understand because there was no frame of reference. And so when there's no frame of reference, we use those, it's the Netflix of, right? When Xerox first came out, it was, can you Xerox that for me? And all of those things, because they were groundbreaking, were there. And so the other way that frames work can be in a difficult place. Like, if I were to say, what word comes to mind when I say used car salesman? What word comes to mind?
Shady, slimy.
Shady and slimy, right? So those are frames of reference over a profession. And those frames of reference come up in the back of your mind and make their way up into the front of your mind to cloud the communication between two people. So if I were to say to you, hey, Brian, I'm a used car salesman, you can trust me. And it's funny because it seems oxymoronic. And so the challenge is that a lot of that with movies like The Big Short, didn't help the mortgage and real estate industry in terms of the reputation. And those reputations turns into frames. And so the skill is to be able to do what's called claiming the frame first. And so Framing is one way of framing is through storytelling. It's through setting a context of how I want you to understand something. If you were to say what's something important that happened to me, I could say I got straight A's my last year in school, or somebody, but that's no frame. Oh, so you were always a smart kid. That could be because what happens if I don't frame it, you're going to frame it for me. And so if I just say I got straight A's, you might think, oh, he was always smart. Well, it could be the opposite. What if I were to say, you would say, tell me something you're proud of, and I were to say, well, unfortunately, growing up, I was told that I was stupid my entire life. And something happened my last year in school where, I looked myself in the mirror and I said, either I'm going to believe them forever or I'm going to do something about it and prove to them that I'm smart and prove to myself that I'm actually really smart. And so I went out and got the work done and put my nose to the grindstone. And I got straight A's my last year in school. And now I claimed the frame. I put a frame in front of the message. And so now all of a sudden that frame is understood and probably feel like, wow, that was, he overcame something, right? And so then the last part is what we call a tie down. And a tie down makes it very clear what I want you to do with this information. And so it answers the question of what this means to you is. So if I tell you the story about, instead of saying, I got straight A's my last year in school, I tell you the story about I was told that I was stupid my entire life, but then I finish it. Let's say I'm on an interview and I want Brian, you to hire me. My tie down would be associated in an influential way to make sure that you understand what that story means to you as a potential employer. So I might end it with, so I tell you about, that I was told I was stupid growing up and then I got straight A's. And so I share that with you, Brian, because at some point, if I do get a chance to work with you and your team, at some point, people are going to tell us that, or our backs are going to be against the wall and people are going to tell us things that, we can't do. And we're going to feel like maybe there's no hope. But I promise you this, if I do get a chance to be on your team, I will be out there in front fighting against those challenges and overcoming them in the same way that I overcame them in my own personal life frame, but this time for you and your team. Tie down. And so frame, message, tie down, all three of those together create the influence.
For people that are watching this that were not in attendance last year at your presentation there, the way you told that story at that point, I mean, there were people in tears in the audience. And I took away from that a lot. And the way that I communicate with my referral partners, my clients, my employees, my friends, my family, my wife, the impact that your message has on the way people communicate and have influence is profound. And guys, Rene hasn't asked me to do this, but I have already signed up for a course that he does. He's got 3 different versions. And Rene, I'm going to ask you to fill in the holes of where I'm failing to explain this properly, but it's called Amplify. And what Rene just drilled down on in a quick 5 minutes right then is a 3-day class, and maybe even more than that online. But in fact, you know what? Let me not even try. Rene, tell us about Amplify, because I think some people watching this may be interested in signing up.
For sure, and I appreciate that. Amplify is a 3. Well, there's 3 ways we deliver it, but basically it's a very intense workshop course to help people go through that methodology, but to help develop and tell their story. Learning the neuroscience of influence, learning body language, sequencing, timing, how they appear. And we do it live, but we're also now launching a virtual, because as you see within this box, I've got to now influence within this small box. You can't see my hands unless I move them up, and I'm looking at the camera now where before I was looking at you, so there's sort of the side view. So the world of influence and body language has changed, and so we're looking at all of the different elements of it, but what's different is that we're recording you the entire time and breaking down those recordings and teaching you how to tell your story. If you're coming from a business perspective, then we're going to help you tell what's called your origin story, which answers 2 questions. One is how you got to do what you do now and why you love serving the customers that you serve. And being able to tell that origin story creates a very powerful frame to tee up the conversation around business and why. And then obviously adding tie downs and all those different elements. But the science of storytelling, the science of influence, and then practice with 9 other peers that are as committed, giving you feedback, you giving them feedback, and watching the transformation that happens over those 3 days. It's pretty significant.
I've seen the videos, I've seen the testimonials, I've seen the impact that it's had on people that I would consider far more advanced and better at their jobs than I. So I know if people at that level of production are getting the level of impact in their lives from this, I can't wait to join it, man.
Well, I'm excited to have you there, brother.
Absolutely, man. Guys, listen, if you have any questions for me or Rene, I'm going to put Rene's contact information down below. Feel free to reach out to him. Well, I should ask you permission. Do you mind if people reach out to you for?
Yeah, cRenespeak.com, SEE, Rene, RENE, speak.com. Palmetto.com.
Okay. And I'll put that link down below. But man, Rene, brother, I appreciate your time today, man. I really do.
Absolutely. It's always an honor to work with you, my friend.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Take
Thanks,
care.
guys.